Hey, yes. First question is for Henry Cejudo. Previously, you were linked to a bout with Jose Aldo. That was talked about. Obviously, a lot of things have changed in terms of fights, events. How did this one come together? How was Dominick Cruz presented to you?
First of all, Dominick was my first choice since the beginning. I wanted to fight him. Since the beginning, I thought it was a great storyline. We're both from Arizona. He's a former champ. I beat the number one contender, Marlon Moraes. I mean, there was really not a concrete number one contender after I beat Marlon Moraes. And my original plan was to fight him, but then I saw the fact that Jose Aldo, did a good job with Marlon Moraes, who was the number one contender. And I decided to go with Aldo, but I always told Dominick, Dominick, stay on deck because, if anything happens, man, you're the guy that I want next. And it just turned out to be that Jose Baldo couldn't get a visa, and that allowed Dominick Cruz to squeeze back in. But he was always part of the plan in the first place. And now we're going to scrap. Now we're going to fight.
In terms of the rankings, he's probably, not the legitimate number one contender. So was the reason that you preferred him just because of his legendary status, his name, and that he's one of the greatest to ever fight at that weight class?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. I'm on a legacy rampage, and I feel like Dominick is probably one of the guys that I can remember that made a big name, that kind of paved the road for a lot of us little guys. But that's another reason why I want to. That's another reason why I want to choose. I want to continue to keep adding big names to my hit list, and to continue this legacy rampage.
What do you think is going to happen with 125 now? I mean, you've got some key guys that are not in the division anymore, such as yourself, and then you've got, Ray Borg, for example, one of the top guys who continuously fails to meet that weight requirement. It kind of seems like it's dwindling. What do you think is going to happen there this year?
Well, I mean, like I said, I did my job, man. I fought for the title. I beat Demetrius. I defended my title. Right now, my sole objective is Dominick Cruz on May 9th. I'm not even thinking about what's going to happen with the flyweight. They got to wake up and smell a coffee. They got to go out there. They got the UFC too. They got to start, really putting time into the flyweights and really recruiting some of the best guys in the world, because the flyweight division is one of the toughest, best divisions in the UFC, pound for pound. Everybody's fast, everybody's technical, and I think that's what makes that flyweight division good. But as of now, my sole focus is on May 9th.
Thank you. I have one more, and it's for both of you guys. So starting with you, Henry, I know you have your own gym in Phoenix. Is that where you got ready for your training camp? And also, does the coronavirus quarantine hinder your training in any way? I would imagine not, because you have your own gym and you can use it privately, right?
Yeah, no, not at all, man. If anything, I really don't know the difference between quarantine, the COVID-19 quarantine, and me and my training camp. I'm a professional. I train each and every day. I do my recovery. I mean, I do everything right, or I try to do everything right. So this whole quarantine, I think by the time the U.S. comes back together, I'm just not going to know the difference.
And what about you, Dominick? What was the training camp like for you? This has to be an unprecedented situation that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I've been rehabbing my shoulder for the past few months anyway, so realistically, I was already training really hard to go back to atrophy and everything else that I needed to do. So I was already training hard. And then Jeremy Stephens had a fight coming up with Calvin Kattar, or Qatar, and I was helping him train for that about 2 weeks before this card got slated. So I was already training pretty hard with Jeremy, sparring him and just helping him prepare, doing the same workouts he was doing to make sure he wasn't having to train alone. So that really, that was like actually led right into this camp. So I technically had about a 6-week camp for this one, which happened to be plenty enough to be in shape for 5 rounds.
What do you think it's going to be like fighting with no audience? That's got to be weird, right?
Kind of. Well, I mean, I think the silence might be the weird part, realistically. But if you fight in Japan, if you see a lot, like there's a lot of people there, but there's not. They don't make a lot of noise, so it could be like that. also when you train in the gym a lot, I don't have a lot of people in the gym, especially now in the quarantine as you're training. We've all been having to train with minimal people, like 4 to 6 people max in the gym, so that nobody's getting contaminated. And it's been pretty silent in there. So I think it's gonna resemble training in the gym, and also similar to the Ultimate Fighter, except we had all the competitors on the teams at the Ultimate Fighter. It was still somewhat kind of eerily quiet. So there's a few different scenarios that I've been in where it's going to resemble this, I believe.
All right, thank you so much, guys.
Once again, that is *1 to ask a question. Our next question comes from Damon Martin with MMAfighting.com.
Hey guys, first question for Henry. Henry, obviously at this point, you're all about legacy fights. You talked about that with the Aldo fight. You talked about it with other fights. Where does Dominick Cruz rank in terms of legacy, in terms of your legacy? How big is this fight for you for that, considering most people consider him the greatest bantamweight of all time?
Yeah, well, I think every fight that you have is your most important fight, right? So, like I said, man, I wouldn't put him above Demetrius Johnson, even though he has a victory over him. But I'd put him up. I put him up in top 3. But my last fight is always my greatest fight, and I do respect Dominick's skills. I do know that he has. I do know that he's tricky, and I plan for that. But I think the difference between me and everybody else is I don't ever fight everybody the same. I'm that type of guy that can make adjustments, and you guys have seen that during the fight. So the way I would rank them is every fight's the greatest fight for me, the greatest fight that I could be.
Henry, there's a lot to be said about ring rust in this sport, but we have precedent with Dominick when he came back off a long layoff and he beat Takeo Mizukaki. He came back off another long layoff and beat TJ Dillashaw. So he's proven that ring rust doesn't necessarily affect him. But what do you expect, coming into this fight off, a 3-year long layoff? Are you looking for those kind of things, or do you have to expect Dominick is going to be the best he's ever been?
Oh, do I? Yeah, that's what I expect. I expect the best Cruz. I expect the reason why Dominick has been successful is because of his grit. I will say this is because of his mind, but I also see a lot of flaws in there too, technically. So I know he's a tough challenger. He's been around the sport for a very long time, analyzing fights and seeing fights like that. It makes you a smart. It gives you a good MMA IQ. But I just think he's going up against a dude that's just hungrier, stronger, that's in his prime. And I'm just on a rampage, man. It's like when I first started wrestling. It's because I wasn't doing as great in the beginning into the international stage. But once I got my feet wet, man, I shocked the world. And it's no difference with wrestling and mixed martial arts.
And Henry, obviously, you're not the matchmaker. You're going to be the guy to sign to fight whoever they put in front of you. And I know your focus is 100% on Dominick Cruz, but I know before this you were going to fight Jose Aldo. What do you say to the guys like Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling and Corey Sandhagen who all want a chance at your title, but there's not a direct line to you right now. If you get through Dominick, you might fight Aldo next. TJ Dillashaw comes back early next year. Like, what do you say to the other contenders in the division?
I'm going to tell them to wait for their king. Wait for the king and tell them to bend the knee. Aljamain Sterling got knocked out by the guy that I knocked out. Wait in line. And then Peter Yan, he needs to learn better English. He absolutely sucks. And you can't be a 41-year-old and expect to get a title shot. That's just ridiculous. I'd rather fight somebody that hasn't fought in 4 years, like as in Dominick, if you choose those two.